So I would grab this and say, okay, how do I go from here to there? And give myself two different emotions. Now, first of all, even in this pose, give yourself a line of action, meaning, maybe, tilt the character a little bit. Give it a little bit of rotation and rotate X, Y, and Z. Play around with the head and neck and go, you know what, I'll grab these and maybe give yourself a bit of a tilt or something. Play around with that. Really create a pose, like a whole pose. Go across every controller and say, okay, this I kind of like how that's there. That's good. This is a good pose. You can kind of maybe plant this hand a bit further out, something like that. So boom, you have your first pose. Cool. Marquee select across the character. Honestly, I would go here to create sets, quick select set, name it, whatever you want. Add shelf. Now you have a button that selects that whole character. You can hit the S key. Now you key that whole pose. Next, you go to the next pose. Hit the S key just to make sure you've got that whole pose keyed. But then you can pose this however you want and make it a different emotion and a different pose. So then you can kind of, maybe you kind of react to something, so you lean away, right? You can kind of even lean with your center of gravity a little bit. This hand, maybe you kind of, maybe you bring your hand up and you're like, what? And you do one of these. Maybe you open your fingers and it's more of a, kind of zero these out. So using this controller for your fingers, by the way, to use it, you click these with your left mouse button and then you middle mouse. And you can kind of modify. That's a slightly faster way. I mean, you don't have to do it this way. It's just a different way of doing it. But sometimes it can be a little bit easier to get some halfway decent poses very fast. So, if we want our character to feel more surprised, you can kind of be like, whoa. Grab these and kind of do one of these. And I know earlier you had kind of a more open mouth, like, ugh. Kind of an idea to do that. Maybe pull this up like that. So, again, trying to create those lines of action. But now you have a pose here, and we can turn off the curves real quick so you can see what's going on. So we're just chilling. Then we go, boom. Wow. Those are two very distinct poses, and that's the idea. You want to make sure your poses are distinct enough so that now you can say, okay, well, then I break this down. So right now, these are just two poses. Then you got to make sure you go in and say, well, how do I actually get from here to there? That's where you then add breakdowns. So you say, okay, I don't want to just let Maya interpolate all of this stuff, because if it does that, it just kind of floats. So what do? Well, one thing I like to do is maybe with the back controllers, I'll say, okay, well, instead of going straight there, maybe I'm going to actually anticipate. So I'll lean maybe into, usually in the opposite direction that I'm about to go. So you can go like this and then go back. So now it has a bit more of an interesting movement. Then maybe I'll put a breakdown here. So kind of lean this way. And now you'll see the body kind of round itself out. Now it still feels a bit like kind of awkward, kind of linear, but this is where you then layer on with the head and neck, and you say, well, if I'm moving down in this direction, what do you do with the head and neck? Well, I can add some drag. So as the body is moving forward, the head can stay behind a little bit. What does that look like? Well, basically I tilt the head back. As my body leans forward, I tilt the head back. So you get this kind of an effect. Like that. And then as I swing back the other way, I can actually tilt the head in that direction. Again, kind of dragging. into this. So you add all this stuff together, and it starts to kind of come together. Then, okay, then you hit this final pose. Now you want to do that with all these other pieces too. You want the hands, you don't want the hands to just go straight to that new position. You actually probably want to go in here and say, well, what if I keep this hand in this position for the first several frames? So I take this 0, middle mouse to like 8, hit the S key. So now that hand's going to stay, and then it's going to rise up. So it's a bit of an offset. And you can do that with this one as well. You can say, maybe I won't hold it that long. I'll hold it, a few frames. So it goes 1, 2. Now the hands pick up, but they pick up like 2 frames apart. So it's a nice 1, 2 effect. And then you can put in breakdowns. You can say, between here and there, with this hand, I want this hand to kind of float out this way and maybe drag the wrist. Maybe I'll pull the elbow this way. So you get this kind of like wider action. And then over here, you can kind of do a similar thing. You can say, well, right now it goes straight there. Maya loves translating stuff in a straight line, and we have to move it in arcs. So that's our task. So don't let that hand go straight there. Instead, go here and say, well, maybe I want this hand to go this way, inside. So maybe I'll kind of do one of these. So the hand kind of picks up and flips out that way. So you just very quickly, you get this effect of, see that? Now you could go the other way if you wanted to. You could take this hand and you could say, okay, well, instead of breaking it down on the inside, an interior arc this way, you can actually go the outside. So you can take this hand and kind of do one of these, and maybe, again, much like the other arm, bring the elbow out and then angle the hand in. So you get this kind of like, rounded effect that way, which also works. So, how you want to do it is up to you. I'll probably keep this one. But are we done? No, the last piece, okay, is settle in. So you hit this pose and you're like, cool, I got that. Now what? Well, you don't just leave it here, because then it just stops. It's like, freeze frame, like it's a mime or something. You hit this and then you actually settle. So one thing you can do is take like this frame, a frame before the final position, middle mouse it out here somewhere, hit the S key. So now it hits this and then settles back, which is good, but it's not done, okay? Generally, you're going to create some overlap here. So what does this do? Well, basically, as you hit your final pose, you want to probably let the head keep its momentum. Notice it's moving from right to left. You want to keep that moving past that, so it doesn't just hit this and then stop and come back to this position. It's actually going to shoot past that. So you might even want to take this and go offset by 1, 2 frames, and now the head is going to have a slight delay. And you can even do this with your arms. You could say, hey, maybe like as that hand arrives, maybe grab one at a time. Go, okay, well, maybe I want this hand to arrive 1 frame sooner. So now it hits and then comes back. And then this arm, maybe I want this to be 1 frame later. So take that, move it like that. So then you get this sort of 1, 2. And this by itself even, just as a slight change, offsets all 3 of these pieces, the head, the hand, and the other hand. Like that. So integrating things like that is going to help you with your overlap. That aside, the last little piece here is probably one of the most important parts of the take itself, which is, like I said before, the face blink. If you're going to do this reaction, you're kind of chilling right here. This couldn't be in the more weird place. There we go. Take this and say, okay, face, key that and go, okay, I want a facial reset like right about here. So I'm going to take this and really kind of compress the eyes, get a nice strong blink in there, get a really good compression. I mean, even just right there, that's not too bad. This, I actually would probably bring the face to more of a neutral position. So like you kind of go this way and then boom. So actually even here, bring that more neutral. So it's kind of neutral, 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 and then it goes compress, and then boom, pops into that. Now, with that expression, this one here, you might want to actually do what I call an overshoot. Basically, you can take this and say, well, maybe at this point, I want like 17 to be at 12. So I'm going to take this middle mouse onto this, hit the S key. So now it's gonna hit that and really pop into that expression like that, really strong. But you might not want to hit this and just stop. Like right now, it just holds this expression all the way through. You can actually hit this pose and maybe even go beyond. You can actually take this and make it even stronger if you can, kind of really push this a little higher that way, go even a little higher here, make the eyes even wider. This is just for a moment in time, okay? Like we're not leaving it like this, but like we're kind of cranking things to 11. Just for a moment, and what this does is you're gonna have it go like, ah. Now, with that, this looks really weird because it's kind of going from like this to this. So we'll kind of tone that down a bit. So you get this overshoot effect with your face as well. I mean, you really just kind of add all this stuff together. And this is only like 1 second, okay, in terms of animation. So this is going to be pretty quick. But hopefully, you can see very, very quickly how that comes together. So this is a very, very bare bones, and I mean, like, I still would probably go in, I'd modify some stuff with the hips there. It feels a bit segmented. You know, you can see like the upper body's doing a lot, but the lower extremities is kind of stiff. You want to make sure that that feels like it's integrated, so it's not like all upper torso and then everything else is kind of frozen. So it's just kind of modifying little things like that. But really, if you get this kind of an idea down, you're creating full animation. Like this is really where it starts to come together, and it all starts with 2 poses and then breaking stuff down. That's all animation is at its core, is good poses, and then how you get from point A to point B is what fleshes it out to make something believable and interesting. So I'll leave it there, but you know, hope this helps. Talk to you soon. Peace.